Thank you for making Locked On Yankees your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. We've got new players in Tampa for spring training. Not the guys most Yankee fans wanted, but they're new faces nonetheless. We'll discuss their arrivals. Plus, late Tuesday night, it was announced that the Yankees were bringing back Anthony Rizzo. We'll talk about that and more on a brand spanking new episode of Locked On Yankees coming up right now.
You are Locked On Yankees, your daily New York Yankees podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone. It's Wednesday, March 16th. I'm your co-host, Stacey Gotsoulias, joined by my co-host, Abbey Mastracco. Abbey, we have actual baseball things to discuss today. How happy are you about this?
We do. I got back from vacation, and that day, like literally that day, the lockout ended. And I was so skeptical. I was like, nope, they're going to just drag it out. Like, we have been victimized by this before. They're going to drag it out, but sure enough, we have baseball, we have transactions, we have positions to talk about, we have things that are not labor and capitalism and lawyers and late night meetings in Jupiter, Florida.
Yeah, I screamed. It's a good thing I was by myself. I was cat sitting last week, and I screamed when I saw, they came to an agreement, and I couldn't believe it because I really, even up until that morning, I didn't think it was going to happen, and it did. And yeah, we have, this is our first real show of the week. If you saw earlier in the week, I was on Sully's Locked On MLB show, and you saw, if you watched it on YouTube, my first reaction to the big trade on Sunday night. And as you all know, if you watch this show, I do not hide my disdain or happiness from my face. So everyone saw my immediate reaction to the trade that we're going to discuss today and other things that we need to discuss because, as I said in the open, Anthony Rizzo's coming back. And yeah, everything's happening. It's sunny in Tampa. They're there. Yesterday was picture day. They were doing all those goofy videos. They're making goofy TikToks now. It's just everything is happening. So before we get into it, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, Spotify, Stitcher. You can watch us on YouTube. And if you have a smart device, you can tell it to play podcast Locked On Yankees. So let's talk about that transaction that happened on Sunday because it was a surprising one. And when it happened, I didn't think it was real. It was also being reported in like piecemeal form. So you saw one part of the trade and then things were added to it as they were. So I was completely confused because I wasn't actually paying attention to Twitter on Sunday night. So I think the first thing I saw was that Gary Sanchez was traded to Minnesota. And
I think we kind of knew that Gary was, we talked about this a few months ago. The reason the Yankees tendered him a contract was probably to see if they could flip him to get something. They were using him as an asset, which is exactly what they did.
Yeah. Yeah. So I saw that, thought it wasn't out of the ordinary, saw he was going to the Twins and wondered, well, who would they be getting back? And then I saw who they were getting back. And the funny thing about it was I'm in a group with a bunch of friends. We were on Yankees message boards 20 years ago. We're now in a Slack. We joked on Saturday about Isaiah Kiner-Falefa going to the Twins and thinking, okay, he's not going to be the stopgap guy. Maybe the Yankees are going to do something. And then when I saw that he was part of this package, I started laughing and thought that me and my friends from my Slack jinxed everyone. And the Yankees are doing exactly what Jack Curry said. They're getting a stopgap shortstop. And it's funny because some fans are thinking that the Yankees could still go after Correa. Why? They have a shortstop.
Yeah. That's their strategy, and they're gonna, they're trying to develop the guys in the minor leagues, and that's been sort of their two big prospects. That's been the concern for, a while now. Because look, teams aren't just looking at how to fill the needs that they have right now. They're trying to project what their roster is going to look like down the line. So a long-term contract for Correa, as much as Yankees fans wanted it, and look, I'm the one who I suggested it too. I said that would solve some of their issues because development is such a non-linear process. But that's one of the it's at the forefront of the Yankees' decision-making, those two shortstops that they believe are going to be a big part of the team's future, a big part of the roster in the future. So they went out and they got a guy who can take the pressure off of them, but also, there's no rush for them to develop and be major league ready right now.
Right. The other thing that angered people once the details of the deal came out was not only is it Josh Donaldson coming over. Donaldson's a great hitter, but he's had injury issues. Not in the last few seasons, but he's had them in the past, so that's kind of scary. He's also on the wrong side of 35, so that's also scary. But they're paying $50 million of his remaining contract, which people are thinking, couldn't they have spent it on something else other than Josh Donaldson? He's also righty. It's like, but then...
Well, they went out and they brought back Rizzo. So, they do have left-handed presence with Rizzo and Gallo, the two guys they brought in at the trade deadline because they had no left-handed presence. It does not appear that Freddie Freeman is going to be in pinstripes anytime soon.
I wonder where he's ending up because a lot of other teams are filling their holes now. And it's kind of odd to see him kind of sitting on the sidelines waiting to see where he's going to go. And it was also interesting to see how the Braves traded for Matt Olson and then immediately signed him to a deal. And Braves fans got complete whiplash within 18 hours of the trade happening. The announcement came out that, oh, by the way, we signed him for, it was 5 or 6 years. So I would like to see him go to the Dodgers. I do not want to see him go to an AL East team. Toronto's gotten enough. Can Toronto stop? Thanks. Toronto, please stop because you have enough.
I respect it. Look, the Reds just gave away Amir Garrett for Mike Minor and cash.
What are the Reds doing?
The A's are giving everybody away. Clearly the new CBA did not prevent teams from tanking. Oh, no, it's almost like we saw this coming.
I know. Who could have predicted that?
Yeah, in the age where we are, clearly tanking's still a thing. I really respect what the Blue Jays are building.
Right.
And that they're being so aggressive about it.
Which is kind of making Yankee fans angry because it's not that the Yankees aren't doing anything, they're not doing something. They're getting people. It's just they're not getting, you're the Yankees. Get at least one big name that's out there. Rizzo is pretty big, but this isn't the Yankees of, the early aughts. This isn't the Yankees of the 90s. They're not just going after every single, all the big players. That joke that we used to have, everybody used to say oh, Mike Trout's only going to be in Anaheim until he's a free agent. Then the Yankees will snap him up. That doesn't happen anymore. No.
This team operates a lot differently. It operates a lot more methodically. It's not just, a cash grab for the best players anymore. The Yankees are trying to see where these guys fit in their roster, where they fit in the future. They have had a lot of success with development. They've seen some success in development. And, that's, I think, where they're headed is they're going to, the priority is winning. Look, we know that this is a fan base that's not going to stand for a rebuild. The Yankees can't just periodically tear everything down and rebuild. They have to be able to balance the present with the future constantly, which is a tough thing to do. So they've got to place a high priority and a lot of emphasis on drafting and development. And then they have to add around that. And look, they did. They went out a few years ago and they got Cole. He was the big name on the market. They're just not doing that with every big free agent anymore. If they don't fit, then then the Yankees aren't going to go after them. They could use another pitcher. They could. The pitching market this winter wasn't fantastic.
Right. But as you said, the A's are giving people away, and they're still, so there's still Sean Manaea is still out there. That could, and there was a report about an hour ago that the Yankees were in discussions with the A's about possibly Manaea, maybe Montes. So there could be something happening.
Would be a really nice addition. I just, oh man, what is Oakland doing?
I don't know.
Come on, we just went through this, you got to spend money to make money, we're trying to save the integrity of the game, and the A's and the Reds are like, what integrity?
You had mentioned Cole, and we're going to talk about the Cole-Donaldson dynamic in a moment, but first, Are you ready to discover your purpose and leave an impact wherever you go? Mission Possible, written and read by New York Times bestselling author and athlete Tim Tebow, encourages you to find your inspiration, pursue your purpose, and create a life for yourself that counts. Ignite a new spark in your life through this new inspirational listen, Mission Possible, by Tim Tebow. It's available everywhere audiobooks are sold. Thanks for making Locked On Yankees your first listen every day. And when you're done with our show, you should listen to Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow, including some names we may see on the field in Yankee Stadium in the not-so-distant future. So it's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Now we have to talk about the Cole Donaldson thing because
but first, Tebow really brings back memories as a former Mets beat reporter.
Yeah.
Tebow brings back so many memories, which I like. When you said when you said his name on that ad read, like that just triggered. I felt like I was right back in Port St. Lucie. The Mets had so many Tims around. I mean, they had the beat writers, Tim Britton and Tim Healy, both great guys. They used to joke that they were going to start a podcast called Tim Times 2. And we were like, well, no, you got to wait for Tebow to get called up, guys. He's got to host the show for you.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that brings back so many memories. Stalker one year during spring training. I didn't have to cover that story because I was off that day. And I met a friend at the beach who lives in Florida. But, like, just the way that the Mets would always bring Tebow out and, like, try and force it on us, like, he's a real baseball player, guys. Just believe us. Like, sure he is. You're not just doing it to sell spring training tickets. Of course not. Yeah, no, we're totally going to believe that. Great guy, though. Like, honestly, genuinely one of the – everything everybody says about him being a nice guy, it's like 10 times nicer in person. Super, super great guy. But just such an unfortunate media circus situation.
Right. Yeah, it really was. That was.
The Mets really do those best. They that's their strong suit, media circus.
That is true. So Cole spoke to the media and said that Brian Cashman gave him a heads up and let him know that this was happening because of everything that happened last season when Donaldson basically. Now, Donaldson tried to explain himself in his press conference yesterday, saying that he just mentioned Cole, wasn't trying to really call him out. He kind of walked back the stuff that he did in 2021. But basically, it was when the spider tax stuff came out, when the checks were coming in, and Cole was like the guy that everyone mentioned. But Donaldson made it a point to mention him. It pissed Cole off, and then Cole struck him out like 3 times in a game when he faced him. So it was kind of funny in that way. And I was just wondering how awkward it would be for Donaldson. And there was, I think Brian Hoke took the picture when he was walking in to Yankees camp. All his stuff was in the background, and he really looked like a guy who was about to go to like an execution because he he just, it's kind of like, you got to be careful. You never know when you're going to be traded to a team if you're talking crap about someone. You never know when that's going to happen. And
that's just sort of how it works sometimes.
Yeah.
In hockey, you might get traded to a team that like has a guy that you just fought the night before. You just dropped the gloves and you fought him, and like you knocked his teeth out, and then all of a sudden you're sharing a locker room with him. Like, this happens in sports. They're going to have to learn to get along for the for the betterment of the clubhouse,
sure,
in general. Otherwise, you're going to have some divided factions, and I think both of them are really outspoken. That's not a bad thing. I think we need more of that in sports.
Yeah.
I've always said I wish players would be more candid, and I'm not going to fault either of them for being very candid. And they were both on opposite ends of that whole sticky stuff conversation.
Yeah.
They're
both pretty fiery too, which is good to have in a clubhouse. I feel like Donaldson could be an asset to the hitters on the team because he has a lot of experience and he is a good hitter. And, some people were worried about him coming into the clubhouse, but I think it'll be fine. It's just,
here's the thing I get this, I've seen some comments from Yankees fans on my Twitter and like on our YouTube saying like the Yankees don't need leadership because the culture is built so that like they don't need leadership. No, every team needs leadership.
Right.
Yeah, sure. The Yankees have a certain culture built in, but like you need your leaders to show the rest of the team how to buy into that culture, like how beneficial it is.
Yeah.
Every team needs leaders. Just because they're the Yankees doesn't mean that they don't need leaders. I mean, years ago the Dodgers were sort of divided, and look what happened. They won a lot of regular season games, didn't do much in the postseason until a few years ago. It does filter down, and it can affect performance on the field. Look at the Mets. There's always some sort of like disaster that happens over there, and it does affect their play on the field sometimes. As much as you want to say like, oh, I just go out and play baseball and it doesn't matter, it does.
Yep.
You need leadership. You need mature veterans to show the young players how to show up and be a professional, when to show up, when to take, when to go in the cages, when to be in the weight room, when to be in the film room, how to dissect all the information. You need to be able to, you need to have leaders to show guys, the attitude needs to stay at a certain level. You can't get too high and too low, but young players can get very emotional sometimes. And you need your leaders to be able to go to those young players and say, hey, it's okay. You had a bad game. We're going to get them tomorrow. It's so crucial. So look, I get it. There's a certain expectation of professionalism in New York. You still need leaders showing these players, like not enforcing it. That's the wrong word, but maybe
right.
enforcing some of these standards within the clubhouse that are expected. And Donaldson is a guy that's going to get guys fired up. Pitchers are good at doing that, but it's every 5 days. So you get amped up when you play behind somebody like Garrett Cole. There's a certain atmosphere. There's a certain like buzz in the air when you've got your ace going. But that's every 5 days. You need your position players to get everyone going on those other days when maybe there is a little bit of a lull in energy, or you're playing the Pirates or you're playing the A's, and you're just kind of like whatever. There's still talent on every team. Last night I was at the Rangers, watching the Rangers and the Ducks, and Trevor Zegras, who's playing on a losing team that's not going to make the playoffs, made a couple like unbelievable moves, and you just realize like, okay, even on the bad teams, there's still a lot of skill that can burn you. And the Rangers, a playoff team, they needed overtime to win. They sort of let the Ducks kind of walk in there in the third period. It's the same in baseball. You don't respect, sometimes you respect an opponent too much. Sometimes you don't respect an opponent enough on like an off day. That's when your leaders going to be beneficial. So I'm sorry, Yankee fans who say that the Yankees don't need leaders. They absolutely do. I mean, come on. They had like one of the most legendary captains in baseball for years in Jeter. So I don't necessarily understand that argument. And I think Donaldson is going to be a good addition for, some the position players and the hitters, and trying to like keep everyone sort of like emotional level in check. Because he's a fiery guy, but he also knows how to contain his own emotions. He's been doing this long enough, and I've seen him in games sort of like hit a point where it looks like he might boil over. Like, I've seen him jawing with some people in the dugout and stuff like that. But he knows that line. He's mature enough. He's a veteran. He knows that line. He's a guy that guys are going to rally around. And if him and Cole can squash it, like, those are two pretty good guys to have in the clubhouse. I think it's going to be beneficial. If they can't, then you might have a problem down the line. But I think right now, there's a mutual respect between the two, and they understand that as teammates, they've got to put it aside, and it's probably better to be on the same side right now than facing each other.
Right. Now, it's funny you mentioned Jeter, because the latest Yankees shortstop spoke about growing up a Yankee fan and liking Derek Jeter. And before we get into no, that's not his name, Isaiah Kiner Falefa, which is, I cannot spell it to save my life. I was having so much trouble doing it, but, I'm going to have to get used to that name. And we're going to have to get used to saying it, because he's going to be the shortstop for at least this season, because they're not signing Correa, people. It's not happening. But before we get into some of the stuff that he said, because he's very excited to be a Yankee. But before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders, God, it's my Monday and I can't speak, orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. You can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or your dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and their prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you could need, from brake parts to tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. So go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution for your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. It's one of those days. Although I will say, my windows are open, which is nice, and it's, you know, spring is here. It's almost as if the lockout ended, the snow melted, and everything is happening. It's great. And the weather for the next, I think, 10 days is 50s, 60s, sometimes 70s. So I think winter might be over. We might be. Yeah, we might be out of the snow.
Apprehensive. I mean, I spend so much time in ice rinks anyway, so it's a little bit different. But I have to go down to Philadelphia tomorrow. What's the weather going to be like tomorrow?
I think it should be nice. So let's talk about Isaiah. Rain?
Yeah.
Oh. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, born in Hawaii, raised a Yankee fan. Love how that happens. And he posted a very sweet video of himself with his beard.
Yeah,
shaving
the beard.
And then without the beard. And he had some funny things to say about that. And my favorite quote that he said, because people were asking about that, like, you know, you had to shave the beard. And he said, they asked him if he missed it. And he said, if you shave every day, it's like making your bed. Winners make their bed. I was like, all right, I could deal with that.
Yeah, there's that book. I forget what it's called. It's like a pretty well-known book written by like a Navy admiral who said you should always start your day by making your bed. It gets you on the right foot. Leaders make their beds. I try and make my bed. I'm not going to show you guys my bed right now because I've been doing laundry and I have a lot of stuff on my bed that I've just sort of hidden off in the corner to make everything look presentable. So instead, you just see my Fleetwood Mac ticket and my Long Beach map.
So the pieces of this trade: Josh Donaldson, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, and a catcher who's Ben? What's his name?
No.
Hold on. I had it and I lost it. It's you know, someone we haven't heard of.
Oh yeah, it is Ben. That's my brother's name. How did I Ben
Rortvet.
He's jacked.
He's so yes. He really is. It's almost like a Jason Dominguez jacked.
He's is. Big. Yeah, like that guy drinks protein 12 meals a day, not just 3. Like he's hitting the weight room hard.
Yeah. He's a big boy. Apparently he's good at framing from what I've seen, and he's a defensive catcher more than an offensive catcher, which is the case for a lot of catchers in baseball. I mean, you know, for as much crap as Yankee fans gave Gary Sanchez, he was one of the better hitting catchers in baseball. Gio Urshela, Gary Sanchez, go. I was sad about both of them because I like them both. I stick up for Gary Sanchez all the time, but I feel like this change of scenery is going to be good for Gary Sanchez. I love that he joked about the fact that he shaved the night before the trade and he wished he hadn't because you know. And then Gio Urshela, which made me laugh even harder, said, oh, no, I'm not going to grow any facial hair. You can't. I can tell from your face that you can't, that I probably can grow more facial hair than you can, Gio. So,
baby face.
I
know a lot of Yankee fans were sad about Gio Urshela. I was a little bit surprised they gave up Gio Urshela because, you know, he was such a sort of like hidden gem type of player for this team.
I mean, they got him for nothing. And what he did that first year was like, where the hell did this guy come from? And how did this happen?
He's one of those sort of like undervalued assets that teams are constantly trying to find. Except now he's like, probably properly rated, which is why he was involved in a trade like this, because the Yankees had to give up something.
Right.
So, Gary was a big, you're giving up a good hitting catcher, but he's got some question marks. Gio Urshela, pretty good defensively. I mean, he's got some limits defensively, but he's pretty good defensively on that third base, and he's versatile. You can play him elsewhere in the infield, and he's also a good hitter, and he's a very timely hitter. I was a little surprised to see that they gave him up, but you got to give up something for somebody for a package like this. Right. And, they weren't going to go after Correa. Isaiah Kiner, Falefa. God, I almost said falafel. I need to eat lunch.
A lot of people are doing that. Yeah.
I'm just really hungry. I haven't eaten. It's almost 3 o'clock, and I haven't eaten since about 8 a.m. yesterday. I've been busy.
We have Johnny Lasagna, Johnny Loizaga, and then we have Isaiah Kiner Falafel. So there you go.
I asked around about him a little bit briefly, and range was what I heard. He's going to be a good player for a couple years for the Yankees, and then they can see what they have in the other two shortstops, and it's just an easy way it's a good way to not have to, do like a long-term deal with Correa. The other idea that I thought maybe the Yankees might pivot towards when it comes to the shortstop position, which, we know is such an obvious position of need. I thought maybe they would try and offer Trevor Story like a short-term deal. He seems like he needs to reset his market.
Yeah.
Which happens when you're coming out of Colorado. I thought maybe that could have been, something that they pivoted to, but I was sort of thinking, I think this is going to be something they address through a trade instead of making a big splashy signing. Sure, it would have been very on brand for the, Yankees of old to make a big splashy signing, but this team is being more methodical, and they are trying to make sure that they can still get their talented shortstops some playing time when they're ready for it.
Yeah. I'm kind of hoping that Kiner Falefa comes in like Didi did, because no one expected Didi to hit the way he did when he came, and he had huge shoes to fill when he came. And I felt really bad for Didi Gregorius because he was following Derek Jeter, which is not an easy thing.
He's such an easygoing guy, though, that he's not the kind of guy that's going to phase.
Right. And it didn't. I mean, he exceeded expectations when the Yankees had him, and he provided really big moments for the Yankees, and he was a lot of fun to watch. And I'm kind of hoping that Falefa, he doesn't have to hit to Didi's level, but it would be kind of cool if when you have your expectations really low, I speak about this all the time because I'm a pessimist. When you have your expectations low and someone surpasses them, it's like, ooh, this is great. Same thing with, DJ LeMahieu was the same thing. People were bitching and moaning about that signing, not happy about it. He wasn't even supposed to be really starting. He was going to be like a utility guy. And, he comes out in 2019, has like an MVP season. And where the hell did that come from? So you never know. People are, not expecting much from Falefa. So it could be good if he's just below average. It would be good enough, especially if certain guys like the aforementioned LeMahieu have a bounce back year. Glaber has a bounce back year. Hopefully LeMahieu will be healthy because he clearly wasn't at some point last season. So, there are some things that the Yankees have going for them. Now, the one thing that we could speak about very briefly, Rizzo coming back, what's going to happen with Luke Voit? Because they asked him about this, and he's saying that he's trying not to think about it, but it looks like the Yankees aren't done making moves, is my point.
So.
Yeah.
Luke Voigt's a good piece. He's going to get he's probably going to get some trade interest.
I would think so.
Imagine.
Yeah, I would think so. I was going to say when he's healthy, he's good, but he wasn't healthy when he had the most home runs that he's ever hit. In that shortened 2020 season when he was running around with, what was that, his knee or the sports hernia? He had something going on, and it was the foot. He could barely walk, but he said it was better for him to run, which is probably why he hit so many home runs, because he just was running around the bases in 2020. So, yeah, I think someone out there will probably scoop him up.
The problem
It's
is he's a right-handed first baseman.
Right.
He's a right-handed hitter.
Yeah.
The Yankees need more of a presence on the left side. I mean, by nature of their ballpark.
Yeah.
Last year I thought it was pretty insane that they didn't have much of a left-handed presence at all until the trade deadline. And sure, they did address it at the trade deadline because it was a pretty glaring weakness.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, there's just not necessarily need for him right now in New York. But if he was a left-handed hitter, he might be getting a little bit more interest, but he's a really good player and he's established that he's a good hitter. And he really wants it. He wants to work for it. He's showing a good attitude about it, and he's mad, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think we all knew, he made some comments last year that showed that he was clearly displeased.
Yes.
To put it lightly. You want that. You want that fire. You want that passion. You don't want somebody who just says, I don't care, and sort of like shrugs their shoulders about it and then just goes and stews on his own. Like that the optics of that aren't going to be great. I think Luke Voigt is saying all the right things and doing all the right things, and there's going to be some interest for him. And if not, he'll get some at bats. It's just not, he may not be a regular this year with the Yankees, and that's unfortunate.
And then we also have LeMahieu, because where is he in this jigsaw puzzle of an infield? Because if you're going to have Donaldson at third, Falefa at short, Gleyber at second, Rizzo at first, LeMahieu can play.
Gleyber at second, though? I mean, has Gleyber won that job outright?
Well, Boone said it today, but then again, he said Gio is going to be, Gio might be our shortstop, and then he was traded literally, 4 hours later? So I don't know. That quote from Boone could be the kiss of death for Gleyber, because maybe Gleyber gets traded. Like I said, they're not done. More things need to be done, but Correa's not coming, Freddie Freeman's not coming. So get that out of your head, Yankee fans. It's not happening. You could see a deal with the A's because they're unloading people. The Reds, I think the Reds still have people, and a lot of people were joking about poor Joey Votto, and maybe the Yankees could scoop him up. But now that they have Rizzo, they don't have a need for him. So they do have a need for Luis Castillo, though. But that's for another show. So there's a lot of stuff to discuss. I'm excited that we actually have baseball things to talk about. It's not bitching and moaning about the lockout dragging on. Opening day, April 7th against the Red Sox. I could do without that, but what are you going to do? Beggars can't be choosers. And then after that, 4 games against the retooled Blue Jays, who, as of this moment, don't have Freddie Freeman. Please, oh God, I can't.
Here's what I have to say about playing time, and I'll leave it at this. Playing time typically tends to sort itself out. Injuries, ineffectiveness, effectiveness.
Right. Yes.
Playing time tends to sort itself out. Sure, there might be somebody who is stuck in a Luke Voigt-like position, but you never know when Rizzo is going to, get hurt or get cold. And
True.
Then you've got somebody that you can plug right in there. Playing time sorts itself out. Not everybody is always happy with how it sorts itself out, but playing time tends to sort itself out on its own.
Right. And it is the Yankees, and they always have people who are injured. So maybe they shouldn't be too quick to trade certain people away because they might need them.
Injuries are going to be a whole other story this year after the lockout, and how guys are trying to ramp up and everything. But that's a story for another podcast. Stay tuned for future episodes of Locked On Yankees.
Yes, where we'll have plenty of injury reports for you, because that's just the way it goes. So for now, that's it for this episode of Locked On Yankees, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Abby and I would like to remind you that you can listen to us in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, Spotify, Stitcher, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can watch and subscribe to us on YouTube. And when you get into your car, you can tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On MLB. Now make your second listen of the day Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, please call him Sully, brings you his unique perspective on the major leagues, both past and present. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. One more thing, if you could be so kind, please rate the podcast and spread the word about this podcast to your fellow Yankee fans. We would really appreciate it. So Enjoy your Wednesday, and we will talk to you soon.